The Maelstrom Hunter by Crimson QB Sage, Chapter 26, No Breaks, with Naruto, Ruby, Mercury, and Emerald. Mercury, Emerald, Ruby, and Naruto rode atop a pair of Goliaths to their unknown destination, Ruby having placed Naruto's head on her lap and started running her hand through his golden locks of hair. So, do you mind, G, I don't know, telling us where you Grim are leading us? Mercury called out, Elder, discuss. Elder, the Goliath, Mercury, and Emerald rode atop of Sen. You keep saying Elder. What is this Elder you speak of? Emerald questioned. Almost. Arrive. Elder. Disgust. The Goliath stated. Suddenly Naruto began to stir. Naruto mumbled, his eyes gradually opening and closing before he tried to sit up. Naruto, Ruby exclaimed. Ruby, Naruto said. Where am I? Welcome back to the land of the living sleeping beauty, Mercury stated, enjoying your sleep during our little camping trip. Naruto blinked, having recognized the person speaking from somewhere, but was not certain from where. So Naruto did what one would do in the best course of actions. Who are you? Naruto exclaimed comically. I'm your fairy freaking godmother. I'm Mercury, you dumbass. Where you been this whole time? Under a rock? Mercury exclaimed. The last thing I remember was being knocked out by that orange mask wearing asshole. So yeah, could someone still fill me in on what's going on for Kami's sake? Why the hell are we on inverted colored elephants? Naruto yelled him. No offense, Ruby, but your boyfriend's an idiot, Emerald deadpanned. None taken, Ruby said, deadpanning as well as she and Emerald watched Naruto and Mercury argue in a comical fashion. Arrived. Here, the Goliath in the front stated, catching the attention of all four members of the group. Cannot go further. By foot. Elder. Disgust. Oh my Kami, these things can talk, Naruto exclaimed. The Goliath that spoke before seemed to stare at Naruto, giving off what was likely a deadpan expression. Well then, it appears that we'll have to travel by foot from here on out, Emerald stated. That's the thing. Where are we going? You guys still haven't told me, Naruto asked. Long story short, we got help from these Goliaths with escaping the White Fang, and apparently they're taking us to some elder. Ruby replied, Come this way, children. An ancient, wise, gruff-sounding voice boomed. Naruto, Mercury, Ruby, and Emerald all felt compelled to follow the voice, and did so, walking in the direction the voice came from. Mount Glen. You idiots! How could you let them get away? Roman yelled at the three White Fang members. It wasn't our fault. Those Goliaths came really close to the base, closer than usual, the White Fang member exclaimed. I don't care if the Goliaths came up and started waltzing with you. Do you realize how pissed he is going to be when? Roman started but was cut off when a massive explosion was heard off in the distance, causing him to look up. Oh, what the... Perry, if you and the boys could take care of that while I try to figure out how I'm going to explain your screw-up to him. The second guard quickly nodded his head before going off investigating the explosion just as another one went off. What is going on here? Roman exclaimed in annoyance as the third explosion went off. Multiple White Fang members running around the corner shortly after, some firing at an unknown enemy. Weiss, Blake, Yang, Roshi, Han, Fu, Swai, and Ublik came running around the corner. Much to Roman's annoyance, the orange-haired criminal turned his attention to the three present members of Team Archfiend, his eyes narrowing in the process. A three-gin jerky together. He is going to want to know about this. I already know about this, Marta called out, appearing right behind Roman. Lord Mother, what the hell happened to you? You look like shit, Roman stated, taking notice of Mother's damaged outfit. Cinder tried to foolishly betray me. She won't be a problem any longer, Mother stated, causing Roman to shiver slightly. Roman despised Cinder, there was no doubt about it, but she had more authority with Madara than he did, so for her to be just another tied-up loose end reminded Roman of his own expendability. I trust that this problem will be handled, but what about the jerky? Roman questioned. I will send one of my Akatsuki members to handle them, Mother said. And also, the plan shall move ahead of schedule. Yes, sir, Roman exclaimed before turning to the remaining White Fang members next to him. Attach this to the cart and spread the word. We're starting the train. But we're not finished, the White Fang member exclaimed. Do it or you're finished, Roman yelled, pinning the White Fang member up against the wall with his cane, melodic cudgel, before releasing the faunace. With Team Ruby, Team Archfiend, Swai, and Ublik, a dozen White Fang members were sent flying through the air, courtesy of Yang's Ember Silica, though the girl's focus was elsewhere at the moment. Ruby! 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 Yang called out. Relax a bit, Yang. Ruby's a big girl. She can handle herself just fine, Foon stated. Besides, we've got bigger problems to deal with at the moment. This train is loaded with all kinds of robots, and Kami knows what else, Roshi said, jerking his head to the train behind him that held a whole rack of inactive paladins. Ah, that's ridiculous. These tunnels are sealed. The track leads to a dead end, Oobleck stated. Get to your places. We are leaving now, Rome yelled across the speaker system as the train started moving towards the tunnel. We need to find out where Ruby is. Let me try calling her, Yang said, trying to dial up Ruby on her scroll. Unfortunately, the scroll flashed low signal. I can't get through. So what do we do? Weiss asked. I believe we only have one option, Oobleck said. We're stopping that train, Roshi exclaimed before leaping off after the slowly speeding up train. The others following slowly after, with Naruto, Ruby, Emerald, and Mercury. As the four huntsmen in training moved closer and closer to the source of the ancient voice, they could not help but notice the drop in temperature occur. All four of them started shivering slightly. What's with the temperature drop? Emerald questioned. Forget that. What's with the snow and ice? Mercury asked, taking notice of the patches of snow and ice that littered the sides of their path. My deepest apologies. I had quite forgotten how you humans could not handle the extreme cold. The same ancient voice called out. The four pair of eyes turned their head to see something that very few could say they saw. Standing a dozen kilometers away was a large dragon the size of a mountain. The dragon had blue scales, ice-like plating, pale blue draconic eyes, and a noticeable scar going down its right eye. It had two human-like yet still draconic arms, two bipedal legs, a large draconic tail, and two massive dragon wings that would easily be considered longer than a dozen train cars. Whoa, Mercury said in awe at the sight. What are you? Another question. Are you a Grim? It is true. I am what you humans have come to call a creature of Grim, but unlike the ones you have encountered previously, I have lived for so long with the knowledge I had acquired over centuries upon centuries. I am fully capable of communicating with your species. But to answer your question, I am the oldest living Grim in existence. Many call me the Elder. You may call me Draco, the ice dragon, now identified as Draco, stated. Oldest living Grim in existence. How old are you exactly? Ruby questioned. Well, the first major event I recall was the division of Pangea, but that happened so long ago, not even your human records go that far back. Back when the legends of old were happening right before my eyes. Back when I was but a young hatchling, Draco said, mumbling the last part to himself before shaking his head. But that is not why I called you here. Why did you call us here in the first place anyways? Naruto asked. Not all of you, just you two. Naruto Uzumaki, Emerald's sister, Draco said. What? Why? Naruto questioned. Only those who have taken in the fragments that the brothers divided from it have the powers to stop its return, Draco stated. Fragments from it? What is it exactly? Emerald asked. He's talking about my brothers and sisters as well as myself, Kit, Kurama explained. Kyubi, what is he talking about? Naruto mentally asked. This is something that my siblings and I have dreaded since our first days in this world, Kurama stated. I'd rather not talk about it. We all lost someone close to us during those days. I'll ask Draco then, Naruto mentally said. Thank you, Kit. Draco, Kurama whispered, grateful that his container didn't push for more information from him. The fragments are the original 9 creatures that the Elder Brothers created from his half of the God Tree. The eldest gave his people the power of to manifest the combination of physical and spiritual energy, while the younger gave his people the power to defend themselves against the first Grim that spawned forth into the world. Draco exclaimed, Ninjutsu, Naruto said in realization. Dust, Mercury added. Close, but the eldest did not create ninjutsu, nor was the youngest primarily gift dust. In order, their gifts were ninju and aura, Draco corrected. But what I remember most about them were their titles, Rikudo and the Aura King. Rikudo Senin, Rikudo Gigi, Naruto / Kurama exclaimed. The first one I've heard of, but the Aura King, never heard of him. That's because containers of the fragments can only hail from the eldest continent, Draco stated. You keep saying fragments and how weak containers hail from this continent or whatever, but the only thing it contains is the furball, and Naruto stated, but realized what the Elder Dragon was talking about before he finished his sentence. The Biju, indeed, though it is to be said, I can only feel half of 2 of the fragments inside you too, Draco pointed out. I'd sense one of yin and another of yang energy. He's right, your bastard of a father split my energy in half before sealing me into you. He took the yin energy while you took while you got stuck with the yang energy, Kurama stated. The Kyuubi just told me that his energy was split into yin and yang before he was sealed into me, and I got the yang half, Naruto spoke. But what yin energy are you talking about, Ryujiji? Can you not sense the energy of your sibling, Ninth? Draco asked, directing the question to Kurama. Kid, I need you to enter sage mode for a minute, Kurama said. Alright, Naruto mentally replied, getting into a meditative stance as he began gathering the natural energy around him. A few seconds later, a familiar orange pigment appeared above Naruto's eyes, his golden bar eyes snapping open in shock and surprise. He shot straight up and pointed accusingly at Emerald. You're Jujirki. I could tend the yin half of the Nanabi, Emerald said after a minute of silence. But Fu, Naruto started. I believe it would be best to start from the beginning, Emerald stated. Flashback start. The sound of few crying infants could be heard throughout the small shack. A pale yet still tan-skinned woman with long, straight mint green hair that went to the middle of her back and had dark red eyes smiled as she held a pair of infants in her arms. The first infant had tan skin and a patch of mint green hair, just like her mother. The second infant, however, had green hair that was a shade darker than the first infant, along with a slightly darker skin tone. Congratulations, two perfectly healthy girls, twins, I believe, the brunette midwife stated. A hand was placed on the new mother's shoulder, only for her to see the man that she had fallen in love with and had children with. The man stood at 5'9", wearing a plain black kimono with a white datijime and dark gray hakama. He had bright orange eyes, slightly darker than slightly darker tan than his wife, and white hair. Fu, the woman said as she looked at the first infant in her hands. Emerald, she said as she motioned to the second infant. At the motion of their names, the two infants stopped crying and opened their eyes for the first time, revealing that the first infant had orange eyes like her father, while the second infant had dark red eyes like her mother. Fu, and Emerald sustering. Welcome into the world, Emerald and Fu, the father said, with a large smile on his face. How touching of a moment that this is, a new voice called out, causing the three adult occupants of the room to stiffen at the new presence. It's almost a shame that I have to ruin it. Who's out there? Show yourself, the father called out, pulling out a hidden kunai he had on him. Now, no need to resort to violence, the voice said. Stepping into the shadows, all three of the room occupants that weren't recently born froze up in fear at the person who stepped out of the shadows. The man stood at 6'1" with tanned skin and appeared well within his prime, retaining a very muscular build. He wore a white hood and a black mask within his eyes that held green irids, no pupils, and red sclera being the only visible part of his face. He also wore a black tikagakure forehead protector with the insignia scratched out, a black sleeveless shirt that revealed the various stitchings on his arms, black shinobi pants, and black open-toed sandals. Kakuso, the bounty hunter, the man exclaimed in fear. What are you doing here? Little old me. No reason whatsoever, Kakusu stated. My employers, however, have paid me quite the amount of money to do this certain mission. What do you? The midwife started, but did not finish her sentences. Kunai was found lodged in her throat. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head as she dropped down to the floor dead. You see, it's not very known yet, but Takagakure has gotten their hands on one of the Biju, the Nanabi, and to ensure that the Biju stays in the village, some of the higher-ups have paid me to seal it into a newborn child, Kakusu said. No, I won't let you take any of my daughters, the man exclaimed, leaping out at the ancient shinobi. Kakusu extended his fist forward, sending the man flying back into the adjacent wall. The father shakingly got to his feet, only to hear the dripping sound of a heavy liquid. He looked down at his chest before his eyes widened. There was a gaping hole in his chest where his heart would be. Kakusu seemed to be grinning wickedly under his mask as he held the man's heart in his hands. You won't need this for long, so I'll be adding it to my collection, Kakusu stated. The moment he finished speaking, the man dropped down to the floor dead. The man's wife held two infants close to her person, her eyes widening in fear as Kakusu slowly crept closer. Why must one of my children bear this burden? The woman cried out. Oh no, not just one, Kakusu said, as the words left his mouth. A mortified look crossed the woman's face. You see, your children were not the first we tried sealing the beast into. We plucked out one of the random children at a random town from an orphanage, but the strain of holding the entire beast was too much and it escaped. So we came up with an alternate solution. We split the beast into its yin and yang components and sealed those into two orphan infants. But The woman could not bring herself to finish the sentence. Tears flowing freely for tears flowing freely from her eyes as she held the Nakaran infants even closer to her. Kakasu raised his hand up to strike at the vulnerable woman, but hesitated as he stared down at the willing infants. Shakingly, he tried to force his hand to move to complete the deed, but found he could not. Releasing a breath he did not know he was holding, Kakasu lowered his hand, confusing the woman. You have 2 minutes, Kakasu said, walking to the exit of the room and leaning on the door. Thank you, the woman whispered. Despite the situation, she could not help but feel grateful that her killer would at least allow her to say her goodbyes to her children. Fu, Emerald, listen here and listen well. You two will have some tough challenges ahead of you, and I won't be there to help you. But know this, Mommy and Daddy love you very much. Even if we won't physically be there, we'll always be with you in your hearts. 1 minute, Kakazu called out from the doorway. Remember to eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, don't forget to brush your hair, and remember to find the right man to fall in love in, the woman exclaimed. 30 seconds, Kakasu said. Remember to keep Yukuna and Shuriken sharp and clean and follow your dreams, the woman stated. 10 seconds, Kakasu stated. Always remember you two are sisters. Make sure you have each other's backs. I love you both, the woman exclaimed. Alright, I'm as ready as I'll ever be. Kakasu walked back over to the woman and raised his hands up. If it means anything, I'm sorry you had to be the ones for this, Kakasu said, and with that, he plunged his hands through the woman's chest, pulling out her heart for his own collection. Can you at least promise me something? The woman asked shakily. Can you promise me that you'll protect them until they can protect themselves? And why should I? You barely know me, Kakasu questioned. It's the least you can do. After all, you're their godfather, the woman stated, and with that, the woman's breath stilled, her eyes lost the life they held, and her body went limp. Despite this, she still held her two infants firmly in her arms. Both Fu and Emerald began wailing despite not knowing the situation. Kakuzu began to spout curses after curses at the dead woman. After a full 3 minutes of spouting enough curses to match that of a seasoned sailor, Kakuzu finally took notice of the two wailing infants. Great, just great. Stuck with being a godfather of two brats that I have to seal a biju into, Kakasu sighed as he prepared the sealing process. Yep, just great. This'll take a while. 7 hours later, Kakazu wiped the sweat from his brow, the separating and sealing process having finally been completed. About damn time. Now I can go collect my pay, Kakazu said to himself. He got up from his crouched position and started walking towards the door. By the time he got to the doorway, Fu and Emerald began crying again. Kakazu, for the 5th time today, released a sigh. Don't do it, Kakazu. Don't do it. This is just business. Damn it! Kakazu mumbled to himself as he turned and walked back into the room, forming a familiar cross-shaped hand sign as the second Kakazu poofed into existence. The shadow clone then proceeded to pick up the two infants and walked out of the room. Outskirts of Takagakure, Kakazu stared out at the setting sun as he held Emerald in his hands while his shadow clone held Fu. Damn you! Damn! You did a crappy job with the seals, Kakazu's shadow clone stated. I know that. I'm no Funjutsu master, Kakazu exclaimed. Damn, I can't take care of either of these kids, and I can't give them both away from Takagakure. If I may, Kakazu's shadow clone started. With Kakazu, 12 hours later, thunder and lightning boomed as the skies poured down on the small village. Kakazu had finally found the perfect person to take care of one of the infants, Emerald, if he recalled. Well then, little fella, you probably won't remember your dear old godfather. Well, when you're older. But remember this one piece of advice. Money is everything in this world. You want to get someplace in this effed up world, you gotta have the money to do it, Kakasu stated. The Nuken suddenly shot straight up, new experiences flowing through his mind. Flashback in a flashback start. Kakasu stood before the Takagakure Council, a calmed Fu in his arms. And you're certain the only one of the infants survived? A random civilian councilman questioned. I'm certain the second child died from the strain, Kakasu lied. And what of the yin half of the Nanabi? One of the shinobi councilmen asked. It immediately fled before I had the chance to recapture it. Mind you, I was in the middle of sealing the yang half in Fu here, so I couldn't do very much to stop it, Kakasu continued to lie. Alright, a deal's a deal. Hand over the Jinchuriki and we'll pay you the money, the current leader of Takagakure stated. Kakasu took one last glance at Fu, whose bright orange eyes stared back at him, before he handed the baby over to the leader of Takagakure. He stepped back, and a few seconds later, a sack of money was thrown at his feet. A pleasure doing business, Kakazu. Kakazu picked up the bag of money and began to walk away without saying a word. Each step he took felt heavier and heavier as an unknown feeling welled up inside his heart, his original heart. He kept on walking until he left the hidden village, his arms hanging at his sides. Kakazu suddenly felt something drip on his head, followed by another and another until it kept on increasing. The ex-Take Shinobi looked up to see that it was raining. He raised his arms so that he was looking at the bag of money in his hands, and then, with one swift motion, he did the improbable. Kakazu threw the bag of money off into the nearby bushes. I've done this 1,000 times before, but what makes this time different? The Kakazu clone thought. He stayed still where he was for half an hour before he finally found the will to dispel himself. Flashback and a flashback end. The original Kakazu walked up to the shack in front of him and channeled chakra into his hands. Doton, Doryuheki, Kakazu whispered, forming a small elevated ground to place Emerald on. After placing the infant on the elevated rocky ground, Kakazu knocked on the shack's door before quickly jumping off out of sight. Not a moment later, the shack's door opened slightly. A young black-haired girl with glowing yellow-orange eyes peering out with a kunai in her hands. She tensed slightly when she saw no one was at the door, but relaxed slightly when she heard the wailing sounds of an infant. Looking around, the young girl finally saw the green-haired infant that rested upon the elevated ground that was crying. Hey there, little fella. What are you doing all the way out here? The young girl questioned, picking up the infant. After looking around for anyone who might have left the infant, the young girl finally noticed a note tucked into the blanket the infant was wrapped in. Pulling the note out, the young woman read it before looking back at the infant. So your name is Emerald Sustring? Well, it's nice to meet you, Emerald. I'm Cinderfall. Off hidden in a tree, Kakazu's lips twitched up slightly as he watched the scene unfold. He could hopefully count on this girl to take care of one of his godchildren while he checked on the other from time to time. Once again, Kakazu, you've proven that you're one crafty genius, Kakazu thought before walking off. Flashback end, and that's my story. At least that's what Nanabe has told me. Emerald finished. How many times have I told you to call me Chome, or Lucky 7? Yin, Chome called out to her container. Emerald just chose to ignore her tenant at the moment. Then how did you guys get all the way out here in Remnant? Naruto asked, Emerald's eyes narrowing at the memory. I'd rather not speak of it right now, Emerald stated. Yes, indeed. We have more pressing matters at hand to discuss, Draco stated. I must speak to the containers of the fragments of an urgent issue of the utmost importance. Whatever you need to tell us, you can tell to Ruby and Mercury as well, Naruto stated. Fine. Have it your way, Draco said. There is an upset in the balance of the world. In the past year alone, I have felt 4 of the 9 fragments disappear. The first, second, third, and 6th to be precise. But that alone has not worried me. No, what has me concerned is the fact that I can feel its presence growing stronger. What is it exactly? You keep saying it, but I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone else here when we have no clue what this it is. Care to fill us in? Naruto asked. Yes, I've forgotten how you humans have lost any recollection of it. Well, in words the humans can comprehend, it was an ancient being far older than the world itself, a godly being that became corrupted when the foolish mother of Rikudo and the Aura King took a fruit that was produced by the deity. It was known to be a massive tree unlike anything unknown before or after it, a being whose power both chakra and aura stemmed from. It went by many names, but the most common name it was known by was the Shinju, but in its final moments it went by another name, Jubi. Draco finished. Shinju? Jubi? Naruto questioned. Jubi was the corrupt deity that was defeated by the Shikudo and the Aura King and split into 2 of them. With the Rikudo, his half was split into 9 fragments, and with the Aura King, his half was spread throughout the Dark Continent and gave its people dust. Draco stated. So what will happen if the Jibu is revived? Ruby asked. If it was revived, then it would go into a blind rage and destroy everything, reducing the world to a barren wasteland. Everything that was accomplished in its absence would be for naught, Draco stated. It would be the end of the world. But why tell us? Emerald questioned. The containers of the fragments are our last line of defense in preventing its return. What I am asking of you is to stop whoever it is that is trying to revive it and free the other fragments that are already captured, Draco said. How do you expect us to do that? Naruto asked. About that? I don't know, Draco said sheepishly, causing the 4 huntsmen in training to sweat drop. But I have confidence that you will figure out a way to do so. Well, if that's all, do you mind doing us a favor? Naruto said. aboard the train. The train rushed through the tunnel, loaded with mechs. A white fang member that stood on the train heard a noise and looked outside the train to see rose petals. He brought out a communication device. I think they're on the White Fang member started but couldn't finish his statement as he fell down, revealing Ublik standing behind him with his weapon. With Roman, "Boss, they made it on the train," another White Fang member exclaimed. "Then grab some cargo and get them off the train." Roman sighed, the White Fang member nodding his head before leaving to follow Roman's orders. "Where is Lord Madara with his solution to dealing with the Jinchuriki?" he said to himself. "I'm genuinely surprised by your lack of faith," Torchwick Madara called out, appearing out of thin air with a familiar shark-like Akatsuki member with him. "This is Kisame. He'll deal with the Jinchuriki. I trust that you can handle the other pests." "Of course, Lord Madara," Roman said. "Good," Madara said before disappearing in another swirling vortex, leaving behind a grinning Kisame before he too went off to follow orders. "Miserable animals, every one of them," Roman mumbled to himself before looking awkwardly at the White Fang member sitting next to him. "Not you, though. You're great." With Team Ruby, Team Archfiend, Swai, and Ublik. "All right, children, we must get to the front and stop this train," Ublik exclaimed. Professor," Wai said. "Doctor," Ublik corrected. "What's that?" Wise asked, pointing down a hatch into the train. Ublik took notice of this and knelt down to take a look. That, my dear, appears to be a bomb," Ublik replied. The rest of the group cringing away from their hatch. "We've got baddies," Roshi exclaimed, pointing forward on the train. Dozens of White Fang members could be seen climbing onto the top of the train. "Well, I didn't expect them to go." Ublik started being cut off by the bomb underneath them, charged up, and started beeping. "Easy on us. Time to go," he exclaimed before standing up. As the group started running away, Ublik stopped Blake. "Blake, decouple the caboose. It will kill us all." "On it," Blake said before jumping down onto the connectors and got ready to cut the connection. But as she does, the connection came loose on its own. It decoupled itself," she exclaimed, looking up at Ublik. "What?" Ublik questioned. "I guess he really doesn't want us on this train," Yang stated as Ublik looked back at the detached cart exploded in the tunnels. "That's not good," Ublik said. Neither is this," Fu exclaimed, standing next to another open hatch. "Another bomb?" Han questioned. No, Ublik said, looking around before running to the next train track, opening the hatch and looking in before yelling back at the group. "They all have bombs!" The bombs under the rest of the group charged up and started beeping, and the cart they're on detached itself, forcing the group to run to the next cart. "This doesn't make any sense," Yang exclaimed. The White Fang members climbing the train could be seen again. "Get the humans!" a random White Fang member exclaimed. Team Ruby jumped forward to attack the incoming White Fang members. Team Archfiend was about to do the same when suddenly the silhouette of a tall man blocked their path. As the man stood back up, the lighting revealed Kisame. Suddenly had a drawn and preparing to fight. "Your fight is with me, Jinchuriki," Kisame exclaimed, jumping back as the train car he was on began to detach itself. "Oh dear," Ublik said as he watched Team Archfiend narrowly escape being caught on the detached train car, which exploded not even moments later. Only this time it created a hole allowing multiple types of Grim to emerge. "He's leading Grim into the city." "What?" Weiss said. "It's the cars. They detach and explode, creating openings for the Grim," Ublik exclaimed. "That's insane," Blake exclaimed as another car detached itself, all the while Kisame kept blocking Team Archfiend from advancing any further. "We have to hurry. You three, go below and try to stop those bombs," Ublik ordered. "What about Team Archfiend?" Blake questioned as she observed Fu block another strike from Samehada. "We'll be fine. Go, stop this train," Fu exclaimed as the rest of the group moved forward. The train continued towards this destination, with White Fang members beginning to pilot multiple Legion Paladin 290s and jumping to the top of the trains. Despite this, Ublik and Swag continued running on top of the train behind Team Ruby. "Up ahead," Ublik exclaimed, seeing as one of the paladins was charging towards them. "We got a problem," he said, taking a sip from his thermos before transforming it into its weapons mode, a small flame burning at its tip. Swag barked, prompting he's ready for an attack. He jumped and slipped in the air, and Ublik batted him, turning him into a small fireball. The paladin was seen shooting, only for it to get knocked off the train by the combination attack. The paladin tumbled on the train tracks and then exploded when it collided with a barricade. Another paladin appeared in front of the Swai, its guns aimed at him. Suddenly, multiple fire attacks struck it, and Ublik swiftly knocked it off the train as well. With Team Archfiend, "Suiton, Suikodo no Jutsu," Kisame yelled, firing enough a ball of water in the shade of a shark at the tree, Jinchuriki. The three jump in out of the way just in time to avoid said attack. Fu! Roshi called out. Fu nodded her head, understanding what her monkey fallen teammate was planning, as both began to weave through multiple hand signs. Kantan, Endan, Futon, Daitopan. Roshi and Fu cried out, the winds making the flaming bullet enlarge as it flew towards Kisame, who just grinned at the incoming fireball. Suijin Heki, Kisame called out, and like the name entailed, a large wall of water popped up to block the wind in hand's fireball. Come on, you're gonna have to do better than that to even have a chance at taking me down, he exclaimed, swinging Samehada so that the massive sword pointed at the Jinchuriki. Where's that Jinchuriki power that those beasts give you? At this, Son Goku, Yang, Chome, and Koku all had the same thoughts. Roshi, Fu, Han, the Biju exclaimed to their respective tenants, show this fish stick we're here why you shouldn't mess with a Jinchuriki and their Biju. And with that, the three Biju sent their jogger to their Jinchuriki, causing Roshi, Fu, and Han to each gain a three-tailed jogger cloak. Now that is more like it, Kisame exclaimed in a deranged maniacal glee. Show me your true power, he said before charging at Roshi, Han, and Fu. With Team Ruby, I guess this is what we trained for, Yang said, as the three main members of Team Ruby entered the train car. Here, this should help us, Weiss said, reaching into her pouch and giving Blake a magazine filled with dust vials. Blake slid the mag into Campbell's shot, and the three of them charged forward. Suddenly, they were stopped when a familiar black-haired Uchiha Akatsuki member dropped from the ceiling and stood in their way. You two go on ahead. This one's mine, Yang said. Blake and Weiss proceeded forward, Hitachi doing nothing to stop the two from advancing. May I have the name of the opponent I shall be facing? Hitachi asked. The name's Yang Xiaolong, also known as the person who's going to kick your ass, Yang exclaimed, charging forward with a flaming bullet punch with Blake and Weiss. In the next car, Blake and Weiss were seen running and then looking at each other when they saw numerous pieces of strange paper floating around in the air. The two girls then saw a familiar blue-haired Akatsuki member, the bottom half of her body having changed into paper, and a pair of paper wings attached to her back. You go on ahead, Weiss said to Blake. Got it, Blake replied, both girls charging forward at Conan, with Blake deflecting a surge of paper as Weiss flipped back. Weiss then delivered multiple strikes at Conan, said strikes only shooting straight through the woman. The spots where they struck dispersed into paper. She then smiled at Blake as she proceeded to the next car. The moment she exited the car, Conan's holes had been replaced with paper. It appears that I am your opponent, Conan stated in a neutral tone, as Harris to this Knee Dust Company, and as my teammate's comrade, I won't lose to you, Weiss exclaimed, holding a Martinaster in guard with Blake. In the next car, Blake stopped and gritted her teeth when she was greeted by a familiar foe. Hello, kitty cat. You miss me? You know, we really got to stop meeting like this. People are gonna talk, Roman mocked, prompting Blake to charge forward to attack, starting their brief battle. Using the dust vial mag Weiss had given her, Blake weaved in and out of Roman's strikes for a melodic cudgel, finally knocking him down. When he attempted to get back up, Blake stepped on his chest and pointed her sword at his throat. Why are we fighting? I saw you at the rally. We're on the same side, and you know it. Roman chuckled nervously, his voice getting a dramatic change in tone. With Yang's fist collided with the stoic Uchiha, only for Itachi to disperse into a flock of crows that began to swarm around her. You're going to have to try better than that if you wish to defeat me. Itachi's voice boomed from around the room. Shut up! Come out and fight me like a man! Yang yelled. Itachi suddenly appeared amongst the crows, his leg raised to deliver a kick to the blonde hunters in training. Yang saw this coming and fired off a shotgun shell from Emerald Celica at Itachi, only for Itachi to vanish once more. The crow finally began to disperse, feeling that Itachi standing in the same spot he was originally. As Yang began to realize this, a familiar blade slowly came out of Itachi's right sleeve. When the blade was fully revealed, Itachi lifted the weapon up so that he held it in front of him. I hadn't thought I would need to resort to using this, the same blade I had used in my days as part of the Anbu, but you have proven me wrong on that. So prepare to fall to my tanto, Itachi said, his tone remaining the same as he spoke. Yang's eyes narrowed before she charged once more at the stoic Uchiha. She threw a punch at Itachi, who in response strafed to the left. His tanto raised to strike the blonde. With one swift movement, Itachi swung his blade at Yang. The slash barely scratched the blonde, having jumped back to avoid the strike, but not enough to escape unscathed. Yang's eyes widened as she saw a strand of blonde hair flutter to the ground, the blonde hair overshadowing her eyes. You, nobody, Yang started, a fiery aura appearing around her as she spoke. Her head snapped up, revealing a hair of blood red eyes in place of her usual violet eyes. Nobody touches my hair! She yelled, charging forward at Itachi in rage. Itachi grunted as she prepared to dodge the enraged girl, closing his eyes before they quickly snapped open, revealing a familiar pair of red eyes with Ryutomo in them before charging forward himself at Yang. With Weiss hopped from glyph to glyph as she dodged swarms of paper Conan sent to her. Please, just walk away. I don't like harming children, Conan said. I'm not going to abandon my comrades. Weiss exclaimed, causing Conan to freeze up slightly. Memories of the past resurfacing. The blue-haired Katsuki member was so caught up in her own memories she barely moved out of the way. In time to dodge a strike from Merchant Esther, a glyph appearing in front of Weiss mid-air, allowing the scarred girl to use it as a jumping platform to launch another strike at Conan, said blue-haired woman, using her paper wings to send her flying back out of harm's way. I'll say it again. Just walk away while you still can, Conan replied. Weiss raised up her rapier once again before charging forward. Her dust vial switched to fire dust before she swung it at Conan, causing a fire explosion upon impact. Very well. Don't say that I did not give you a chance to leave, she said, her paper forming into a cluster that shot out at Weiss, catching the girl in the strike. With Blake, as Roman was held down by Blake, he grunted as she pointed her blade at his throat. Still feisty. So, what are we going to do now? You think a little bow on top is going to make people forget who you are, what you've done? Roman questioned, causing Blake to grit her teeth at his words. She suddenly heard the door from leading to the previous train car explode open from behind her. Weiss was slamming into the floor by a cluster of paper, effectively knocking her unconscious, with Conan emerging from the doorway with a soft look on her face. So, what's it gonna be, Blake? Roman asked. Before Blake could react, a lone paper shuriken was hurled at Roman's head with enough force to slam his head into the floor, knocking him unconscious. With widened eyes, Blake turned around to look at Conan and the still unconscious Weiss. But why? Blake questioned. You knocked him out, Conan said, and after you knocked him out, you rushed over and saved your comrade from certain doom. The two of you both escaping my clutches and going back to try to stop this train, she finished, mentally commanding the paper to loosen around Weiss as she finished. Oh no, my concentration has slipped. Someone might be able to, I don't know, rush in and grab this girl before my concentration returns and run away before I can even begin to react, Conan said in an over-exaggerated tone. Blake, having gotten the hint, rushed in and swiped up Weiss and fleeing immediately. All the while, Conan just stood there and smiled. With Yang. When Yang and Itachi finally collided, Yang was the first to strike as she threw a punch at Itachi. Said stoic Uchihas jumped up to avoid the punch, swinging his tanto at Yang mid-air. She raised up her other gauntlet, blocking the short sword before firing off another shotgun shell. Itachi righted himself in the air and raised his tanto up in a defensive manner, just in time to as the shot from Ember Silica sent him flying back. Itachi did a backflip and managed to land on his feet, skidding back a few yards before stopping. I am done playing around, Itachi said as Yang, with a battle cry, charged at him once more. Genjutsu, Sharingan, he exclaimed as he made eye contact with Yang. Said girl's eyes widened before she began to fall forward, crashing to the ground with a thud. Itachi began to stalk towards Yang, fully prepared to deal the finishing blow. Before he could, a masked warrior with raven hair clad in red and black came out of nowhere and knocked Itachi back. Itachi's eyes narrowed at the new mysterious person. The mysterious swordswoman slowly drew her sword again, a long and crimson red sword, and held it intimately. At this, Itachi sheathed the tanto he was wielding in his sleeve before closing his eyes. Blood started dripping from his eyes before they reopened, revealing a strange pinwheel design. Mangekyo Sharingan, Itachi mumbled. Suddenly, a shred of orange ethereal flames began to cover Itachi, but before he could call out the name of his technique, he dropped to the ground violently coughing. Some blood was coughed up as well, not much, but enough to be concerning. His eyes immediately returned to the original charcoal black. No, not now. Not now, of all times. Itachi angrily whispered to himself. The stoic Uchiha slowly pulled himself to his feet before jumping out the nearest exit. The swordswoman looked down at the still unconscious Yang, knowing fully well that the girl would wake up soon enough, and slashed her sword to the side to open a red portal of some sorts. She walked away from Yang and into the portal. As this happened, Yang began to regain some consciousness and slowly got back up. As she opened her eyes again, she got a brief glimpse at her. She got a quick glimpse at her rescuer before the woman disappeared at her next blink. Yang rubbed her eyes, still reeling from her unconsciousness, before standing up and leaving the scene. with Team Archfiend. Kisame leapt back as a red claw slammed into the ground where he once stood, courtesy of Roshi before attempting to do the same again. Unsuccessfully when Fu came barreling into him, sending him flying back and into the next train car roof with enough force to leave an indent in the shape of himself. The shark-like man got out of the indent in the train car roof, only to be sent flying back by a steaming fist from Han. Are you done playing around, Kisame? Mother called out, appearing in a spiraling vortex right beside Kisame. Ah, you know how much I like to play with my food, Madara, Kisame said. At the mention of the infamous legendary Chiha, all three Jinchuriki froze up. Well, with the amount of time you spent playing with your food, the time window to extract the Jinchuriki has come and gone, Madara said. We must retrieve Konan and leave this train before the impact. Fine. Go ahead and ruin my fun, Kisame whined. Through a grin, though a grin was on his face as he spoke, though those were his last words before Madara placed his hands on his shoulder and both disappeared in a spiraling vortex, most likely to retrieve Konan. Wait, did he just say impact? Roshi pointed out. All three members of Team Archfiend's eyes widened as they finally looked forward to find the train shooting straight towards a dead end. Everyone brace yourselves, Han yelled before going through a set of hand seals. Doton, Chikiyu Enkai, he exclaimed, the rock from the walls from the cavern around them tearing off to form an earth dome around the three Jinchuriki. With Weiss, Blake, and Yang, all three members of Team Archfiend somehow managed to meet up at the front of the train, only to find the train was on a head-on collision course with a stone wall. What do we do? Blake questioned suddenly. Weiss smiled as she got an idea, forming a nice shield to protect her teammates, bracing themselves for the impending crash. The train had crashed into the wall, the explosion causing a bright white flash. After recovering from their shell shock, the three girls could hear the sound of an emergency alarm blaring. Weiss was the first to get back up, followed by Blake and Yang, the latter coughing as the dust settled. The white-haired girl's eyes widened as the group realized, much to their worry, that they had returned to the central part of Vale, and multiple civilians in the area noticed them among the debris. The sound of low rumbles and growls was heard from behind them, setting the group on edge. Suddenly, a giant King Daijitu emerged from the hole, and multiple Grims started pouring into Vale. Amongst this wave of Grim was the three remaining members of Team Archfiend, the charcoal cloaks having faded, and all three looking like they had seen better days. Nevertheless, all three Jinchuriki kept on fighting the Grim as they poured out. Roshi appeared to yell something, but it only came out as no louder than a whisper. Following Roshi's proclamation was the sound of civilians screaming as they attempted to flee the chaos. The sounds of screams and roars filled the air, and all three members of Team Ruby could do was watch in horror. One of the werewolves approached the still shocked Team Ruby before it could strike. Roshi shot forward, bisecting the creature of Grim at its torso. Han and Fu went to help Blake and Yang, while Roshi went over to Weiss. Come on, Ice Queen. We got to help evacuate the civilians, Roshi exclaimed, offering his hand to a scared girl. Weiss' expression changed from worried and scared to angry and determined. The alarm continued to blare as Weiss took the extended hand and Roshi pulled her up, all six huntsmen in training pulling out their weapons as they prepared to fight the incoming Grim. End of chapter 26.